Hi, we're CNC.
And in 2020, we took a road trip through the Midwest and fell in love with it.
So we sold our home and traded the West Coast life for the Midwest life. And now we're on a mission to show the world
the fun people,
places,
and exciting events that make up the corn-fed life.
Save me a piece of that corn. Good morning and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Corn-Fed Cast, a podcast about all things Midwest. My name is Craig.
And I'm Corrine.
And we're going to have this podcast on. Hopefully it'll become a weekly thing, maybe more often, and to discuss all things Midwest. But today we're going to take a step back and discuss how we became Midwesterners, why, more specifically, we left the Pacific Northwest. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. And, if you're thinking about moving out of the Northwest or the West Coast in general, we've actually lived all up and down the West Coast. And just to give you some maybe food for thought on why you might want to leave too.
Yeah, we'll help you along. So I started off doing some research about why other people are also moving out of the Northwest. And I found that there was people that were on the liberal side. There was a man that spent a lot of time in Occupy Wall Street, except he did Occupy Oakland. And there was also a housekeeper, or not a housekeeper, but a homemaker who was fairly conservative that also lived in the same Portland, Oregon area. And they both were in total agreement that things politically had gotten out of hand, that the government no longer cared about the people and just let Antifa run wild and wreck the city. So both of them got fed up and left. And I also saw an article that was commenting on a report by U-Haul. U-Haul was saying that people are just skedaddling out of Washington like crazy. And the commenter, Paul Guppy, he said that the main reason was because the poor government in the state, that there was rising crime, that it was just ridiculously expensive to live there, and that there's just so much drug use now in the Northwest that people are fleeing to other areas. So there was these main reasons that other people are leaving the Northwest, but what are some of our reasons?
Yeah, so we'll just share today a few of the different motivations we had for leaving. And right off the bat, so we recently were back in the Northwest for a wedding of a good friend of ours. And one thing that it's the two M's that hit me right away when we were back there after having been gone and then returning was masks and marijuana. So what I mean by masks is out here in the Pacific, out here in the Midwest, it's rare, especially in the rural area where we live, it's rare to ever see a mask. And when we went back to Oregon, even in the town we're from, Roseburg, a town of 25,000, it was just masks everywhere. Everyone was wearing them in the stores and stuff. I would say about 70 to 80% of people were wearing them. There was, a percentage of people that weren't, but the majority was. And it's just, after being here for so long, it was depressing to go back there and just once again.
It's like a step back into the bad old days.
Yeah, it's so nice here to see everyone's smiling faces and just to see people. And then you go there and everyone's covered up and
won't look you in the eye.
Yeah.
Yes, that when people are masked, they tend to not look you in the eye.
Yeah, and then what I mean by the marijuana, of course, marijuana has been legal there for quite a while for medicinal and recreational. And more recently, they've also legalized mushrooms, supposedly for medicinal purposes. But we all know what's going to happen with that. But anyway, when I say marijuana, it was like every time there's so many people that smoke. If you've never been around somebody that smokes marijuana, like after they've smoked, they kind of give off the odor from their breath. And I swear it must emanate from their pores. But I noticed it seems like every time you walk in a store where there's a lot of people, like as soon as you walk in the store, you just get this huge odor of marijuana. I just noticed that everywhere. I was like, the whole state just smells of marijuana.
Yeah.
Our hotel, walk in, as soon as you walk in the lobby, you just like marijuana smell. It's just prevalent everywhere. And
you're kind of sensitive to smell anyway. So
yeah,
that doesn't help very much.
But anyway, so those are a couple reasons. The drug use in Oregon, ever since they legalized marijuana, it's brought in lots of homeless people. It's just caused so many problems. Petty theft is up there. Like petty theft there is bad. Everyone's looking for their next hit, and they're looking to just anything they can grab and pawn for $30-$40 so they can get another hit. And even a cop told us that. He said the biggest petty thefts are things that are like $30-$40 because they're just thinking about their next hit. They're not even thinking like, oh, I can make some money. They want to get something they can quickly pawn and get their next spot of marijuana. But anyway, so anything that's not, you got to lock your cars. When we went back there, we started locking our cars again. Out here in the Midwest, nobody locks their cars. It's not uncommon to go to the store, and right now in the middle of winter, it's a bit cold, so a lot of people leave their car running, keys in the ignition. It's just something you see all the time. But out there, you got to have your car locked, and I don't think it's gotten as bad as what I've seen in San Francisco. I've seen in San Francisco photos at the grocery store where people will drive in with their SUVs and they all open the backs to, let thieves know, like, don't break my window. Like, there's nothing in here.
It's not that bad yet.
Yeah, Oregon's not that bad yet, but it's getting bad. When we were there, we were renting for a bit. When we first moved back up there, we were down in California for a spell. And when we returned, we rented for a couple of months. And the first month we rented, our house got broken into twice, just so they could grab, little items, and stole a bike too. But it's maddening because we grew up in this town of 25,000 people, and their theft was just not really an issue back then. People didn't used to lock their doors, and it was just a really safe place. But now it's like, if it ain't nailed down, someone's going to carry it off.
Yeah. And one of the reasons we were a little bit forlorn to leave the Northwest is because it is drop dead gorgeous. It is so beautiful. Even when we had completely made plans to move out, that we were loading up our U-Haul, we were driving through the mountains on the way to the coast, and we were saying, oh, do we really want to leave this because it is so beautiful? But because of the government policies of allowing marijuana use, and therefore a lot of homelessness and crime into the community, it's really cut down on your enjoyment of the outdoors. One of the best things about Oregon is the outdoors. But if you go to a park, even out in the middle of the woods, you can expect to see homeless people there and people that won't think twice about stealing something from you because they're that addicted to drugs. So even though it is much more beautiful in most respects than other places in the country, it's really hard to enjoy it nowadays because everywhere you go, you're reminded it's not safe here.
Yeah, and the homeless camps, it's not just that homeless people are a problem. It's that they set up camps and they leave piles of garbage, and then every once in a while the local cops will run them off, and they'll just leave mountains of garbage behind, just kind of ruining the view. And it's often in just out around the town in like just public places, just garbage and trash everywhere. And then another thing I wanted to mention, she mentioned the outdoors. That's another reason that another thing that's sad about the Pacific Northwest. The forest management has gotten really bad. There's some really poor policies in place, and we've now added what a lot of people are calling a fifth season, which is fire season, in which basically just huge swaths, and it's like a yearly thing. It's like almost every year for I think the last 3, 4, maybe 5 years. I mean, there's always been forest fires, but now they're just like so much more extreme. They have policies where a lot of times they'll let a fire burn for a while and until they feel like it's gotten out of hand, and then but then often it's too late. And then like some of our favorite nature trails up the North Umpqua River were recently completely burned. There was some beautiful hiking trails among the trees, and just when actually as we were leaving with our moving van, driving along these areas, we saw some of our favorite trails that we used to love to hike just completely burned out.
Yeah,
So
a lot of people lost their homes up there too.
yeah,
It was really bad.
yeah, and just every year, somewhere in Oregon, fires just break out and they get out of control. So basically, what that means is everyone in the state has to breathe smoke for about a month. It seems like every summer, seems like at least a month where the smoke just hangs heavy in the air. And there are days when you can't even go outside because the smoke is so thick. They say if you're outside, it's like smoking a pack of
Yeah,
cigarettes.
we once had the world's worst air quality there in the Northwest, even more heavy than Hong Kong or any of these places. It was the worst in the Pacific Northwest. And I grew up there. I spent a lot of time there, and it never got smoked out until about 5 years ago. Then it was every single summer. But you never had a summer with the air filled with smoke, and you can't see the sun. I
Right.
remember we had a long spell of heavy fires, and we lived high up on a hill. And so I called my mom one day because I could finally see the sun. I was so excited about it. But it's really tough, especially on people who have asthma or COPD, and it's an actual killer because of these poor policies where they no longer do as many thinning, and they just let fires burn for about a month before addressing them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just another sad part about living there. It's just you could look forward every summer to having a horrible smoke season. And ironically, the summer we moved out here in May to the Midwest, and that summer there was a time when there was some smoke here, and they were saying on the news that it had come all the way from
Yeah, it's
Oregon.
incredible.
But of course, by the time it gets here, it's pretty thinned out and it's way up high, so it doesn't really bother you.
But we did have an overcast day here because
Yeah, yeah, there was a day where it was kind of overcast up high with just, and they were saying this is smoke from the Pacific Northwest from the fires. So you can imagine if it's coming all the way out here, you can imagine how bad it is when you're there locally. And yeah, sometimes you even think like, oh, I can get over to the coast and it'll be clear. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes the wind will shift and bring all the smoke out to the coast. So there's just often nowhere you can go. It's just you got to stay in your home for sometimes for weeks at a time.
So, what was a big thing for you that was a major relief when you got out here?
I guess the big thing is just the freedom that you have. Like you just kind of feel it. It's
Yeah.
just you just don't feel as oppressed as out there. There's nobody like telling you to do this or wear this mask or and I don't know. It's just really free. Even like economically, like when we first moved out here, we were living in a storefront. It was an old building that had been converted into a residence, but it had a storefront, and we thought, hey, we can open up a little store and sell some stuff. And we had been told that you didn't need to do anything, but we wanted to be sure. We went down to the Chamber of Commerce and spoke to them and said, we're thinking about running a store to sell, some of our furnishings and different things we don't need. And what do we need to do? And she said, oh, well, just good luck. Nothing you need to do. Just have fun. And it was just amazing. You didn't need a permit or anything. You could just run a business. It's just up to you to keep your own records and pay your taxes. And that was about it.
Yeah, that's something I don't like about living in different areas. That a good thing about the Oregon in particular is that it doesn't have sales tax. but I think they're working on that one.
Yeah, it's actually amazing. They're one of the last few states that don't have sales tax.
Yeah.
Except in the city of Ashland, they do have sales tax there. But yeah, I do miss that. It's nice to look at the price of an item on the shelf and know that's what it's going to cost.
Right.
Yeah. But so what else? What's another reason you can think of that?
Well, I didn't have the opportunity when I was living in Oregon to even dream about retiring early. I really loved my job. It was great, and I loved the people that I worked with, but it doesn't really compare to not having a boss and kind of figuring out what you want to do every day. And I found myself, even on my time off, it was kind of spent putting the house back together instead of really doing what I wanted to do. And places like the Midwest offered housing at such an affordable, incredibly affordable prices. I just can't believe it. Like we look on Zillow all the time and we see that a house is only costs this much, and it's so tempting, even though we can't afford to purchase a home.
Yeah.
But the housing market having boomed in the Northwest, we're able to take advantage of that and then go ahead and use the proceeds from the sale of our home to just live off of for a while and purchase a home outright.
Yeah, in fact, it's actually a little better than that. So we actually ran several bed and breakfasts. We owned. I say owned. We didn't own anything.
It was all mortgage.
We had 4 bed and breakfasts that we ran. All bank owned, and but since the real estate boomed so much, we were able to sell all those places that we did not own. And out here, we actually bought. We had at one point we had 4 different places that we owned outright that we bought cash, and one was a fixer upper, but the other 3 were nice properties. We actually owned all 4 until yesterday. Yesterday we just signed papers. We sold our residence in Smith Center, Kansas, which is the town we originally moved to before we moved out to the country. But it was just amazing to think about. Like, we own 4 properties outright, and
they weren't. Yeah. Well, one of them is a dump, but the other properties we would consider to be nice places to live, like decent places to live.
So. Yeah, and one we bought as a rental property, which we have on the market now because we ended up moving to a different area, and so we don't want to manage a rental from far away. So we're selling that one, and then we have our primary residence here out in the country, and then so we will soon be down to 2 places. But it's neat that we own these places outright, where if we'd stayed in Oregon, we might not have owned any of them until we were like 60 or something, because it's just the prices were so high.
We were talking to somebody, and they coined a term. They said that they were Texas rich and California poor, because you can sell your house for such a high price on the West Coast and then turn it over for low priced home that's probably 3 times the size and the quality in a different area of the country. Yeah,
in Oregon, when we left last year, a starter home was about $200,000. And by starter home, I mean something that was probably, that was the low end of the market. That was like the cheapest houses you could find were about $200,000. And you were looking at like a 2-bed, 1-bath, maybe 3-bed, 1-bath. Definitely not getting a second bathroom. And you're looking at a property that's probably 50 to 60 years old. That's what you're getting for $200,000. And I tell my friends, man, if you come out to the Midwest, bring $100,000 and you can get a nice home. Not a starter home, like a pretty decent home. If you want what would be called a starter home, you can get one of those for under $50,000 out here. And if you come with $150,000, you can get a phenomenal property, and for $200,000, you can practically get a mansion. Just the prices are amazing, especially out here. I'm speaking of rural Midwest. In the big cities, it is a little more. It's still by far cheaper
Yeah, it's still
than the West
reasonable.
Coast, but it's if you can afford to live in the rural areas, which there are plenty of jobs in the rural area. As right now in the U.S., I think there's no place you can go that doesn't have jobs. So many people that don't want to work and stuff now. Um, we're currently in a small. Well, we're in the out in the country, but we're outside of a town of I think it has about 4,500 people. Isn't that about what the
Yeah,
population is? 4,500. And I was looking at the jobs board, and there's probably 20 or 30 jobs in this small town. And then, if you go to the city, you're probably looking at hundreds of jobs. So, there's plenty of jobs, and then you can buy your own home. Whereas on the West Coast, unless you have a pretty high paying job, good luck buying a place right now.
right.
A decent home, like a nice place, you're probably gonna be looking at like 300,000 for like a decent starter home. 200,000, like I said, for like something that's not that great.
Right. And I've also noticed something that used to be a big thing in my life is no longer a big thing, and that is high stress levels. Like it seemed like when I was living over in the Northwest, that even on my days off, I'd be a little bit stressed, and things that would come at me in life, all the little problems that come at everybody every single day, they would really bother me and put me upset. But I found that here, the culture really is slow paced. And oh, don't worry about it. It'll turn out all right. And usually, usually when you don't do anything, it just works itself out. It's like a total change. And I think it's putting more trust in God as well, because throughout this whole process, we really had to lean on God to show us the direction in which to go, and also trust in Him that He'll work everything out. And that seems to be the culture in the Midwest versus the Northwest. The culture is quite different, stressed out, more secular, more worried about fixing things yourself instead of being kind of reassured that things have a way of working themselves out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mentioning culture is one. That's another huge reason that I've actually thought of leaving Oregon for quite some time. Just the culture. I would call it a culture of death that is in Oregon, and that sounds really harsh, but it's true. And I speak of one, the death of innocent babies and abortion. Oregon is the most progressive state. There may be one or two others that are neck and neck with it, but it's very progressive when it comes to the killing of the unborn. You can actually abort a child up to birth. There's no limit in Oregon, which is just absolutely disgusting. The whole world, like the whole developed world and most US states, have some sort of limit, at least. Usually it's first trimester. I think some places you can into the second, but in Oregon, there's no limit. You can, like I said, you can go in on the due date and say you changed your mind and you want to have an abortion, and you can have the baby killed on your due date, which is just absolutely heinous. I mean, it's disgusting to kill a baby at any stage, but I think it's even more heinous when it's fully developed and it's obviously viable at that point. Like it's just that's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just low value for life when you're young and when you're old as well. They have assisted suicide in the state, and
I think they were one of the first states, right,
yeah,
to bring assisted suicide.
and it has been shown that there have been cases where people have been coerced into committing suicide, whether they're pushed by family members or for medical staff that really doesn't care. A lot of times people will think that they're worthless and that they don't have anything to offer when they're older, and it's not true. People are valuable just because they are made in the image of God. They're valuable
Yes.
beings, and we get that reiterated to us often in this part of the country. So it's really great to get out of the Northwest and get out of that culture of not valuing life, because you find yourself treating people differently in turn when you actually value everybody, even the more irritating people. You still value them more. And there's also
Dennis.
there's also the weather aspect, because even though it is extreme weather, whereas we came from the banana belt in the Northwest, and it was very mild winters and nice pleasant summers, not too hot or humid. However, there is a lot of dreary weather in the spring, fall, and winter. And you can go days and days without really seeing bright, sunny skies. Whereas if you look at different parts of the country, it's a little bit easier on your depression during these times of years. You can see the sun most every single day, and if a storm does come up, it comes up, it dumps, and then it moves on. So I really appreciate that.
Oh yeah, it's the sunshine has been fantastic out here. It's probably as sunny as it is in California, and maybe even more so because there's really no mountains out here. So the sun comes up super early because I mean you look straight out over the plains and it comes up, and then it drops, and then because there's no mountains, after it drops you get twilight, which the sky just glows for a long time after sunset. So it's so bright out here and just so sunny.
And the night skies are even more glorious because you get more sky. Yeah. And one time Craig told me that he was driving down the road, and what did you see?
Are you talking about the moon?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was when we were at the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
We were looking for a meteor shower, and we had stopped at this little monument because it's up on a hill, so we thought it'd be a good spot to look for meteor showers. And there was a cornfield to one side of me, and then all of a sudden I saw a bright light coming out of the cornfield, and I was like, what in the world is that? And I just stared at this light, and then it came up a little higher, and then I was like, oh my goodness, it's the moon. The moon was coming up out of the cornfield, which was like on straight eye level with me. So it's weird because in Oregon, especially there's mountains everywhere.
Yes,
so usually
never seen
you don't see the moon until it's way up in the sky, but it's just strange to see it come up out of the corn. But yeah, it's just the skies, we don't have mountains in the Midwest, but I like to say that the sky is our mountains, because you get some glorious skies, with clouds, and then when the sun sets, you get all these colors, and it's so grand. I mean, I just want to be, since we've moved here, I think I've taken more pictures of the sky than I ever have anywhere. It's just, you get these just amazing skies, and like she said, at night, the stars are just amazing, the panorama. Plus, being out in rural Midwest, you really get to see them, since there's not much city lights. You can really see the stars. The Milky Way is just so thick. It's amazing.
Right. So I think we covered basically all of the reasons that you should as well move from the Northwest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad. We miss friends. We had a lot of great friends, and we miss our church. We had a great church that just was like a family to us, and so we miss that. We do miss some things. We miss the natural beauty, but other than that, just it's great to have gotten out. And it's kind of sounds sad to say it that way, to have gotten out, but I really do feel like it was really starting to just extremely go in the wrong direction. And I coined a little term, which hopefully you don't find too disrespectful, but I say, like, because I'm trying to convince my parents to move out here, and I say, basically, it's like we left Sodom and Gomorrah again. So, as cheesy as that is, but that's how I feel. It's become so, like, they've just rejected God out there in so many ways. I mean, there are good churches and there's still good Christian people, but it's hard to imagine like why as a Christian you would want to stay in such a secular place when there are plenty of places where God is still on the throne.
Center of
Yeah.
the culture and the center of people's lives.
Right. So yeah, it's hard for me to understand why a Christian would want to stay in such a secular place. Just like, in the Bible, when Lot was staying in Sodom and Gomorrah, even though it had become so worldly and he was a God-fearing man, but he stayed there. And then, finally, as we know, God got him out, by the skin of his teeth. But that's how I feel. Like there's a lot of Lots right now, a lot of Christians that are just living in this place that has turned its back on God in so many ways. And, I don't know, for whatever reason they put up with it. I'm not being judgmental because we put up with it for a long time. And I think finally we just saw the writing on the wall and we're like, we need to be in a place that is more in align with our values.
Right.
Because if you have certain values, why would you live somewhere that's hostile toward those if you have the option? I mean, I understand there's some people that don't have an opportunity to move, especially, you have people in China where they're persecuting Christians, but they maybe can't get out. But it's like, if you live in America, it's not hard to get up and move anywhere you want. So it's,
you just gotta kind of change your way of thinking about things.
Mhm.
Usually people stay and grow up and live in the same place their whole lives. But if you just open your mind to different possibilities, there's a whole world out there.
Yeah. And I think the main thing is you just have to trust in God. I mean, we came out here not knowing what we were going to do. We kind of figured out that we wanted to do this corn-fed life thing and kind of just kind of show off the Midwest and all the fun people, places, and things that there are out here. But other than that, we didn't have jobs lined up. We just kind of came out here. We took a leap of faith. By selling our properties, we were blessed to have enough money to live on for a year or two. But it's definitely not like, oh, we can just retire now. We do need to make some income. So, but we're just trusting on faith that either the corn-fed life will really take off for us, and that would be awesome. But if we need to get jobs, there's plenty of jobs available. But I think people just need to trust that if you're following God and going to a place that He has called you, that He will bless you. And that's so far we've seen so many blessings that we didn't even expect or know, and we just feel like God has just been guiding us here. I mean, if you would have asked me, a couple of years ago if I ever thought I'd live in the Midwest,
right.
The Midwest wasn't even on our radar. We knew nothing about it, and I would have said, "Are you crazy? What's in the Midwest? I don't even know. Is there just corn and wheat out there? I don't."
We get the same jokes because people know so little about Kansas. We always get the same jokes when we tell people we're moving out here. It's like, oh, it's so flat, and oh, say hi to Dorothy. Those are the same things that everybody says.
Yeah, everybody gives the Wizard of Oz jokes. It's like mandatory. They hear you're in Kansas, they have to make a Wizard of Oz joke.
Well, we kind of went with that. We got some Wizard of Oz little trinkets laying around the house.
Yeah, and we are big fans of the Wizard of Oz, and we did go to the Wizard of Oz Museum in Wamego, Kansas, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Kansas does embrace the whole Wizard of Oz thing, even though it wasn't filmed in Kansas, as most of you probably know. But hey, why not cash in on it? So anyway, hopefully we've helped you clarify if you're thinking about moving out. Hopefully we've given you some ideas of maybe why you should. And anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, and we appreciate you coming along for the ride. And if you are interested in supporting us in this endeavor that we're doing here, we would greatly appreciate it. And you can tell them how to do that.
You can find us at patreon.com/cornfedlife.
Yeah, so we appreciate you joining us. Hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more episodes coming your way soon. God bless.